My name is Egan Fajardo. We will discuss in this section the high-level scope and cost of the PM life cycle. This section focuses on model techniques to translate the original project deliverable goal into a technical work unit-oriented structure with initial time and cost estimates. Scope definition is considered as a foundation step upon which to construct an initial time and cost estimate. The important outcome of this is to synchronize the scope, time, and cost elements, meaning that all three elements must satisfy the project requirement. There is a management concept that says you cannot control what has not yet been defined. Successful projects are just as much about managing relationships as they are about managing change. So the project manager must be vigilant in controlling the project outcome. Our primary goal now is to begin our journey through planning and defining the project scope. Before we start, it is important to first understand the definition of a scope management plan and scope statement. The Project Management Book of Knowledge describes the scope management plan as how the project scope will be defined, developed, and verified. Therefore, the scope management plan provides guidance on how the project scope will be managed and controlled by the PM and the team. Our project scope, on the other hand, it contains a description of the project scope which consists of information such as the deliverables, assumptions, constraints, and a description of the work that is to be accomplished by the project. The scope statement can be highly detailed or broad, depending on the organization and the needs of the project. The team, guided by the PM's leadership, establishes the project's objectives, deliverables, requirements, specifications, as well as criteria for success in terms of realistic, clear, and measurable objectives. In the slide, displayed are 14 steps that comprise how to accomplish the project scope. While some steps need to be done sequentially, many of these can actually occur in parallel. We will go through each of these. But while we go through each step, peppered on each project, or peppered on each step, is a project scope statement of a fictional project on developing a dog breed identifier tool titled as DoggyDex to help us with examples. First, project and product objectives. Objectives are defined as something that is to be accomplished by the project, which can be in the form of a tangible product or possibly less tangible project items such as status reports, quality control documents, and other related to running the project. A project objective would be items such as delivering the defined outputs on time, on budget, and within scope. On the other hand, product objective, which is different from project objective, this would be to make sure that the software is user-friendly, that technical specifications are met, and so on. Requests for changes may be encountered during the life cycle of the project, and thus it is important to manage this, otherwise the project may fail. In our DoggyDex, the objective is to develop a user-friendly electronic device that identifies a dog breed using video input within the allocated budget and be in the market before the International Dog Day of 2023. Second step of our project statement is the product or service requirements and characteristics. Here, the team must translate what the stakeholders want, what they need, and what their expectations are into the work requirements that are necessary to produce those outputs. These requirements need to be prioritized because they may be a resource issue. These requirements must also be in very concise statements such that no two individuals will interpret a requirement differently. Once these are documented, They need to be communicated back to the stakeholders so that they can review and agree. In our dog decks, we have four requirements or four product requirements. First, the device must fit in the palm of an average person. Second, the device must use an in-house camera to capture a video feed. Third, the dog breed must be recognized in less than 3 seconds. And fourth, the user must be able to share a discovered dog breed through social media. Third step, product acceptance criteria. The project scope statement outlines the criteria for which a project will be approved and therefore is a definitional guide to measuring success. One example of an acceptance criteria would be the requirement of submission of all project closeout documentation and all program code to the customer. For information technology projects, this could be goals related to performance and quality. For instance, system response times or transaction rates could form part of the performance acceptance criteria. All acceptance criteria should also be written in concise statements that avoid different interpretations. For our doggy decks, we have listed two acceptance criteria on the device performance. First is that the dog must be recognized from a distance of 50 meters, and second is that the server must be able to handle transactions of more than 10,000 concurrent users. So this is only acceptance on the device performance. There will be other set of acceptance on other specifications of the product. Fourth step in identifying the project scope is the project boundaries. Project boundaries need to be set so that the PM does not find himself or herself being placed in a position where the amount of funds provided is set, but the scope of the project work keeps growing. Boundaries need to be identified in the scope statement so that there will be no confusion as to what exactly will or will not be accomplished during the course of the project. This will be important as conflicts may emerge on what is within the scope of the project, and thus it protects the team in these situations. For our doggy decks, we have placed two boundaries. First is that the device will only recognize the dog library produced by the American Kennel Club as of end of 2022. However, there is an option to expand it so that future or additional dog breeds could be added in the future. And second is that fictional or mythical dogs such as Growlithe and Cerebrus are not or will not be part of the dog libraries to be recognized. Fifth step is project requirements and deliverables. A project requirement can be defined as anything that needs to be accomplished as part of the project. The PM book further defines a requirement as a system, product, service, result, standard, or anything else that is desired by a stakeholder. Just as discussed in the product requirement step, this need to be concise and this must be communicated back to the stakeholders. The project requirements and product requirements, which we discussed previously, may seem and sound similar. To differentiate between these two, product requirements consist of technical requirements, performance requirements, and security requirements, while project requirements consist of delivery requirements, business requirements, and project management requirements. For our doggy decks, aside from having a deliverable of the dog breed recognition tool, additional deliverables are identified such as the monthly status reports and the final report, the system documentation, and the corresponding warranty and maintenance after its acceptance. Six steps is the project constraints. Most projects have constraints that limit their degrees of freedom. Many times, these are not recognized and therefore not obeyed. This section provides a means for formally communicating to the key stakeholders what these constraints are for the project and its environment. Constraints are really restrictions that exist, such as funds, timelines, or contracts that need to be respected, and so on. The project manager must be able to identify timelines and tasks that are based around these constraints. In the DoggyDex project, there are two constraints identified. First, that any images processed will not be stored in the device or the server because of data privacy concerns. And second is that um, interactions or social media integration through Facebook will be limited only to those countries who have not blocked the service. Seventh step is project assumptions. Assumptions are statements that the project manager believes to be true. Example is access to some defined level of organizational resources, such as all team members having workstations provided, or the team members being provided office supplies, equipment, and so on. The project assumptions can also be opportunities for the project. It may also state that some external organizational group will provide support to the team. This section, in a nutshell, provides a formal way to communicate assumptions, and in a way describe how the project will be impacted if these become false. Thus, these assumptions must be regularly reviewed as the project progresses to check if they are still valid. For our DoggyDex project, there are also two assumptions identified. First is that the data protocol set by the American Kennel Club as of end of 2022 will be used to standardize the representation of dog data. And second is that the client has secured all clearances that are needed to allow third-party access of the dog data held by the American Kennel Club. Eighth step, project organization or the team assessment. The team membership section of the project scope statement will likely have very little information at this stage, since the project is not yet completely defined. Project organization and team assessment information include the team member's name, contact information, and position. In addition, it may contain the member's responsibilities and specialty area, such as computer programmer, architect, or engineer. This section could also be as simple as listing an alternative project manager, signifying that the team member has a signing power in the absence of the PM. In our DogDex example, listed are four identified personnel lists, one for the project manager, one for the dog breed expert, one system engineer, and one technical writer. Ninth step is the defined risk. The risk management process at this stage is of high level only. This process provides a way to reduce project outcome uncertainty by providing awareness, assessment, and handling of risk. This section minimizes future threats, seizes opportunities, and achieves improved results. It also identifies the degree to which a risk may occur and the outcome it could have in terms of impacting the project's success. These risks may be categorized into groups such as environment, technical, resources, integration, management, and so on. For the DoggyDex project, there are also two risks identified. First risk is the unsecured approval from the American Kennel on data access because it may cause loss of accurate test data. And second is that the rising semiconductor prices may cause increased costs in the production. 10th step are the milestones. Milestones are significant events, deliverables, or achievements within a project or schedule. A significant event could signify that phase 1 has been completed and phase 2 is beginning, or another milestone could be the completion of a system testing. Completion of activities at each geographical location may also be defined as separate milestone events. Furthermore, it is commonly it is commonly observed to hold a milestone at the end of the project to indicate that it has officially been completed, leading to a formal closeout celebration if appropriate. At this point, timeline estimates may also be included for each milestone. For the Doggy Dex project, there are four milestones identified. First is the approval of design. Second is the development of a prototype device. Third is the completion of the pilot testing using the prototype device. And fourth is the development of the final version of the device for production. 11th step for the project scope statement is the initial work breakdown structure, or WBS. The initial WBS for the project is very high level and is subject to significant error margin since the specification details are not yet completed. The goal of the initial WBS at this stage is simply to logically organize the work estimate. This will expand as the scoping process unfolds. In our Doggy Dex project, there are 6 categories for or that can be used for the breakdown structure, starting from the design phase up to the final acceptance phase. 12th step is the cost estimate. This section will describe the budget based on the requirements available at this point, and thus will also produce a high-level estimate. As with the time initial WBS, cost estimates will often be quite broad regarding the amount of the budget for different aspects of the project, such as equipment, labor, facilities, technology, and so on. This section also addresses where the funds are coming from in terms of specific program or department or a combination of both if these are known. In our Doggy Dex example, listed are 4 costs on the design and prototyping phases. So there are costs identified on the focus group discussions. There's costs on the usage of the 3D printer, on the purchasing of software development tools, and the costs associated with in outsourcing the project for manufacturing. Second step is the project configuration requirements. Configuration management is how the entire project is managed, from procedures to set up project documentation, to tracking of project milestones, and to team interactions. Each team will have different rules because of internal team processes. All rules of engagement is going to be not likely indicated, but there may be rules that will make sense to formally display on a project scope statement. For example, all data and information related to the project could be centralized to make sure that every team member is using the most up-to-date team information. The PM could have write access, while the rest would have only read-only access. In our Dogedex example, there are 3 configuration requirements identified. First is that a cloud file service shall be utilized to store project documentation. Second is that daily virtual meetings shall be held. And third is that document versioning shall be in place to manage any document changes. The 14th and last step is the approval of requirements. So this section regarding approval requirements is for the protection of the project manager and the project sponsor for the signatures to be obtained so that everyone agrees to the requirements contained within the project scope statement. In our Doggy Dex project, there are 3 key stakeholders that needs to have their approval secured. The client's head of office, the client's assistant head of office, and the client's service delivery manager. So there are various project scope statement available, or there are various project scope statement templates available online that we can use. What we include in the project scope statement, as discussed at the start of our session, can be highly detailed or broad, depending on the organization and the needs of the project. Thank you for listening. We will continue to the planning and organization stage of the PM life cycle in our next discussion.